Today, we're going to talk about neurodivergence and self-esteem. We got a lot of really great questions about this from our Q&A episode, but realized this is a huge topic that most neurodivergent families and individuals struggle with at some point, but we haven't really done a lot on it yet. So we wanted to dedicate a whole episode to it.
Yeah. Okay. So to kick us off, we're going to revisit the original question. And it was, my son is 6 and starting to notice a difference between him and his peers. He feels he gets shouted at a lot and is always doing the wrong thing and has now started saying he's the worst person in the world. That was a quote. For context, he recently had a baby sister and he's very rough with her. His sensory needs aren't really a match with, being soft. So this kiddo is a sensory seeker. He likes to squeeze things, and that means sometimes the baby, which means at home there have been some raised voices.
Oh man, does this sum up the neurodivergent parenting and child experience? I don't think there's a single family that I have ever worked with that has not had some version of their child saying, "I'm the worst person in the world" at some point. Brianne,
Same.
same,
Yeah.
nodding.
Just talked to a parent about this past week.
Yeah, yeah. And it's hard because as a parent, you're balancing the need to set some type of boundary and support all of your children, be it two, be it one in a situation where they really are doing things that aren't great or aren't safe. But then you also don't want your child to sit in this kind of shame spiral. And when you're neurodivergent, you start noticing at a pretty young age this real difference between yourself and your peers. You begin to wonder, like, what is wrong with me? Like, why do these things feel, my personal experience with this was like, why do these things feel so much harder for me, so much easier for them? Which I think is really a major hallmark of that neurodivergent experience. And then layered on top of that, right, are getting a lot more corrective feedback from the adults in their space.
Right.
And there's things that they need to work on, and it takes longer.
Yeah, so it's honestly hard to keep all this from adding up to, the result being a self-esteem hit. So today, let's talk about it. How can the experiences of being neurodivergent in a neurotypical society negatively impact self-esteem, and what can we do about it?
Welcome to Parenting Neurodivergent Humans. I'm Dr. Morgan Beidelman. I'm a psychologist, former teacher, parent to 2 kids, one of whom is neurodivergent, and I am neurodivergent myself.
And I'm Brianne Colpitz. I'm a school psychologist, parent to 2 neurodivergent kids, and I'm ADHD, which means I'm autistic and have ADHD. Okay, so first, let me say this topic can be a bit of a gut punch for parents. We know how wonderful our kids are, and we see them struggling, and it's hard. We see the extra challenges that they face and how hard they work, and also how they are misunderstood, and just all of the things. And then on top of that, we see how all those things add up to see their self-esteem suffering, and it's just an extra layer of attention we have to pay when we're parenting our neurodivergent kids.
If you're a parent of a neurodivergent individual, like, you're doing a good job. Parenting is really, really hard. And your child experiencing a hit to their self-esteem does not mean that you're a bad parent. I think it's
Yeah.
just it's part of the experience of being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks for
and
saying that. Thanks for
yeah,
saying that.
yeah. And I think the big thing to really know here is that being neurodivergent means that our brains work differently, and different can be fun, creative, invigorating, and really, really, really hard, particularly when you're in school, because you have so little, and no shade to school, but you have so little agency in your space. And so when you are when you're conforming to a system, right? Like a preschool system, an elementary system, whatever it is, your soccer system, you're like all of these systems that you're in as a kid, and you're still trying to figure out your body and all of that. It can feel particularly hard. And then you get into your preteen and teen years, and then you get this added layer of the multidimensional thing that is peer relationships in that age. And it's a lot.
So much.
So much a lot.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. I'm just trying not to, as I, am really in the thick of it with parenting my kids, which I mean, I guess that's just the status quo. I'm like, okay, don't crash out during this episode. Don't crash out during this episode. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we were joking about when before we started, we were like, "Oh, here we are talking." We're all bantering back and forth, and we were like, this is going wrong, and this is hard, this is hard, this is hard." And then we're like, "What's the episode about?" Oh, good, neurodivergence and self-esteem.
Right. So basically what we're saying is life lesson. Okay. You're not parenting badly. And we just want you to know that this is a reality. Okay. So we also know that many neurodivergent kids are still in, yes, 2026, getting the message that they are bad or something is wrong with them.
Mhm.
Um, and neurodivergent profiles like ADHD, for example, are often told no far more than their peers or given directives that feel impossible for them to achieve. Like, for example, sit still, or maybe stop making noise, or stop tapping. Yeah, kids with learning disabilities often don't understand why some tasks that seem easy for their peers, like, say, memorizing just spelling words or multiplication facts, why that feels impossible for them no matter how hard they try. So, talking about brain wiring here and alignment with learning and just existing. And like, to revisit the question at the top of the show, our neurodivergent kids are sometimes more likely to do things that are unsafe. So some of the no's we can't cut those out. Like, we have to keep people safe, we have to set boundaries, we have to say no sometimes, but how can we just maybe say no less when we don't have to?
Mhm. Yeah, man, my brain just went in 4 different directions, but, I'm gonna only share 2 of them for this moment. We'll see if I get through the whole episode. I remember being a kid, I'm sure I've told this before because I say it all the time, but when I was a kid, my mom, would use timeout because that was her strategy, and in a lot of ways it worked. But it was so funny because one time she was like, "You just need to." It wasn't really a timeout. It was like she was so overwhelmed. She was like, "You just need to go and sit still on that step for like a minute." I think she wanted to have, like, a big reaction, but she was also trying to, like, temper herself, and so that was where she got to in the middle, and I went and I sat on the step, and I remember trying to sit still, and I was like, "I don't understand why my mom is having me do this when I, like, physically feel pain, and I know my mom does not want me to feel pain. Like, I know that that's not her intention." And I remember sitting there and being like, "I wonder if she doesn't feel pain sitting still," because I remember it was, like, physically painful to try and sit still, and I'm sure I didn't do it. I remember my mom being like, "Good enough."
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But there was this moment where I was like, "My mom loves me. She doesn't try to have me be in situations that are painful, but yet I am in pain. Is this," air quotes here if you're listening, "is this normal?"
Right. Good
Yeah.
insight, though, from little Morgan.
Yes, and I also remember being a little, because I also have dyslexia, when spelling bees were a thing. I used to get out on purpose early on, and then I'd be like, "Oh my god," like, I'd be at the back of the line, and be like, "Oh my god, I know how to spell 'of.' I was having a massive brain fart. Why did I spell 'off'?" And I would, like,
Right.
make it into this thing so that people knew that I knew how to spell the easy word, air quotes around easy. I picked a word that was easy for me and got out on purpose and then made it into a bit,
Yeah. Aw.
right?
Self-protection.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But yeah.
This is another tangent, but I feel like
Yeah,
I
please.
should insert it here. I lied as a kid a lot out of
Mhm.
self-protection for my self-esteem. Not because I was like some kind of sociopath, but as a
Mhm.
way to not feel embarrassed or called out or on the spot, and that's making me think of your spelling bee example, which is very much that spotlighting and like having all the attention on you. And sometimes we want that and sometimes we don't. But I remember trying to lie my way into like social connection and things like that. But yeah, we could go a lot of ways with this self esteem episode, but we're not going to catch them all. But anywho, thought I
Yeah,
should
so
mention that.
that's just a sliver of the window of things. That analogy doesn't make sense, but or
We're with
but
you. We're with you.
just imagine it's a sliver of the things that kids sometimes do. And when they're trying to figure it out and protect themselves, sometimes they're not protecting themselves and they are just kind of like living in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's kind of break this down into some ways that we can support and work through some of it. So the first one that I would say is this shouldn't be a shocker given the things that I talk about all the time, but talking to kids about how their brains work. And I've actually been expanding this recently with my teen clients, and I think that it's actually valuable. I've seen the value in it. uh, and might be valuable to expand for even younger kids. Let's talk about brains in general because all brains have variation. Sometimes they vary a little bit and sometimes they vary a little bit more. And when we are neurodivergent, our brains tend to vary a little bit more. And I think that has been a helpful framework. So shifting away from talking to kids about like your brain works differently to like all brains are different and you have additional differences in some of these ways and you have other points of similarity in some of these ways is helpful. A lot of kids really benefit from hearing that all brains are different
Right.
rather than just your brain is different.
I like that. And then, okay, another way is to look for supportive ways to shift behavior when needed. So, this is offering a safe replacement, like, oh, hey, don't punch your brother, punch a pillow instead. I mean, that's like kind of a cheeky example, but that's the gist. It's like you're trying to shift the thing to be less worrisome, like
Mhm.
safer.
Mhm.
So, yeah, being okay with things that aren't harmful. Like we have to be able to tolerate our discomfort sometimes to be able to not have to say no to our sensory seeking kids sometimes. Or just whatever
Yes.
your profile kid
I
is.
also think that there's a good skill in this one brand that's like coping ahead. Where like if you see that your child is maybe having some proprioception issues or like not having that same type of they're sensory seeking and they don't understand, they
What to
don't
do with it.
they
Yeah,
don't feel the intensity of the squeeze or the
right,
hold that they're doing, which I would imagine is what is happening for this little guy in the question above.
right,
Like, this kiddo is loving the baby and does not understand and doesn't feel doesn't get the reception that like, "Oh, that's too much.
right,
This is right now." And so being able to like, obviously in the moment you have to correct that and keep both kids safe, like one psychologically safe and one physically safe. Like think about
right,
psychologically hurting your sibling, right? Like, and then think about like physically hurting your, but that's problematic. So yeah, in the moment, are you going to be like, let me help and take the baby? Absolutely. Or whatever it is, right? But then you have an opportunity to do something with your child called coping ahead, which is where we would say, hey, you know what? We are still working on figuring out like some of our own body and like where it feels good for us, but also what feels good for the baby. Could we practice that? And so you plan ahead. Maybe you add an extra pillow that's firmer underneath the baby that gives you space or distance so that the pillow creates a more physical boundary. Or maybe you work out a cueing system with like where if I say, oh, hot potato, it's like release a little bit, or whatever it is. But then that way you're partnering with your child and you're helping them cope ahead or plan ahead. And that can be really, really helpful.
yeah,
Uh, and is something that is going to be done. You're going to have the initial reaction and then in the moment of safety, and then you can plan after that.
yep. I
Uh,
love those examples too.
you can also do that with older kids too, right? You can
Yes.
sound the way that sounded. But you can do the same thing. You can do something very similar. I just was doing this with a client over the weekend where they were like, "Oh my gosh, I just screamed at my sibling and it really wasn't even about that. It was about something else. My brain got stuck and then she was doing something repetitively and here we go." Right? It's like, "All right, well that happened. Let's talk about how to cope ahead because that's going to happen again. And you're not a bad person for it."
Yes.
So this is I stole yours and now here's mine. A third one, again, not a shocker in terms of things that I say on repeat, but really helping them develop strengths and special interests. I have forever said that right now we're in an age of a lot of therapy for kids, and therapy can be a wonderful tool. And if you have a kid and you're choosing between soccer and therapy, or horseback riding lessons and therapy, in most situations, when I talk through it with a family, I'm going to defer to the other activity and not therapy. And that's me as a therapist. And the reason for that is that I want to help a kid feel good in themselves, in their body, in their mind, and the things that they're doing. I want them to have more and more of that to kind of counteract the narrative that is often built around neurodivergence. And I want them to have those opportunities of just right stressors where you have to just try it one more time, but you really like it. So it's okay. It's easier to try again when you love the thing. And then to have that resilience that comes out of it is really, really important. And that is rarely taught in a therapy office.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I think another way to support self esteem is to seek out characters and real life people that have similarities to your kid. Role models are so important. Living in an age when we have less and less people to look up to, but they're still out there. So, neurodivergent people don't outgrow their neurodivergence, but they do often learn how to accommodate themselves and organize their lives in such a way that their disability might not be obvious from the outside. So
Mhm.
this means neurodivergent kids might not know who the neurodivergent adults are in their lives around them. So that can be helpful to have a role model or someone who is somewhat similar to your kid so that they know that like neurodivergent kids grow up into neurodivergent adults and you're going to find your way. And I think hearing the stories of neurodivergent people shows our kids that they're not alone and that they aren't broken.
Mhm.
We say that a lot. I also think you can learn about accommodations that have worked with other people when you're in community with other neurodivergent folks. So that's helpful. And then also want to give a shout out that Dr. Morgan has a huge list of neurodivergent characters that she's been keeping for years that will link in the show notes. It's a great resource for you and your family. And it's a great way to find some books or TV shows or movies that have neurodivergent characters.
Yeah. I also just want to say, you said something about like having less and less role models. I think that we are in a time where we have fractured um role models. So meaning that we used to be that we all sat around and we watched the same TV shows as families or whatever. And so we all saw the same role models. But
Right.
now we have 9 million streaming services, 9 million different shows. There are very few things, unless you're watching Stranger Things. The entire world seems to be watching that. But there are very few things where everybody's watching it or a lot of people are watching it. And
Right.
I would actually just say that there are lots of good role models, but we just have to seek them out more so
Yes.
than
Yes.
before. And that's part of right one of the reasons that we made the character list so that you could see where some of these guys are existing.
And I think because it's also not always the most famous people who are the best role models, it's some of these characters that we wouldn't even necessarily know about. And I think, especially when we're looking for neurodivergent role models, sometimes we just have to dig a little bit. So I like that you have the list. That's super helpful.
Thanks. It
Yeah.
came out of our families. So thank you,
Yeah.
families. Speaking of the last one that I would say here is building community, which is what we hope to be doing. And having that understanding community can make all the difference. And I would even say that it doesn't have to be that they understand exactly what's going on for your kid. They don't have to say all the right words. I've told the story about my neighbor who knew that I was a psychologist. And I think my granddaughter has some of the odd, and what she wanted to know was like, how can I be a good grandmother to my kid, even though, you know, it's something that she feels like she hasn't experienced before as a grandparent, and she didn't maybe use quite the right words, and maybe her daughter would be like, "Oh, mom, get it right." you
Right.
know, but the person was curious and cared, and I think that those are two really important things. They don't have to always get it right.
Yep.
Be curious and caring.
Yep.
Um, and then whatever that community looks like, if it works for you and your family, it works. Like I have one son who who is very was when he was younger very hyperactive, and there would be moments where I would be like, "Oh my gosh, you feel like you're gonna just like vibrate off the edge," and then he would make a joke out of it and be like, "Oh," and like act like he was going off of an edge, right? And in that moment, on the outside, it could look like I was ragging on him, right? But the way that we were working together worked for us, right? It gave him the feedback that he needed. He was also a jokester. I wasn't getting on him about it. But on the outside, it might look a certain way. But if it feels good to the person and it works, then it works. And it's a supportive community. And it also doesn't mean that you're always talking about neurodivergence.
Right. Right.
You could be talking about something that you really enjoy, and by doing that, you get to unmask a little bit, and kind of like let your hair down. Maybe you're talking about Minecraft forever with somebody, or maybe you're talking about just anything that you like, right? Maybe you guys are doing something next to each other, but not really talking. And that might look a certain way to the outside world, but it could be really soothing and enjoyable for the two people doing it. And all of that can be community. So it also could be online, playing a game together as well. I think that's a very highly used one, but underrepresented when we think about social relationships. You can have very real social relationships online. You can also cross the line into addictive behavior. So there's a line there, but like let's not minimize the very real unmasking and social relationships that can live online for
Yep.
people. So all of that to say is community can look a lot of different ways. And if it works for you guys and it allows for that masking and it allows for that connection, roll with it.
Yeah. Love that. Okay, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another Q&A episode. You can submit your questions using the link in the show notes.
If we are a good fit for you, follow us on Instagram. Dr. Morgan is at Dr. Morgan Beitelman, and Brianne is at It's Brianne Colpitts. You can find the podcast on YouTube and Patreon at Parenting Neurodivergent Humans.
And as always, if you have a question or topic you want us to cover, send us a note. You can message us on Instagram or use the Google form in the show notes.
And as always, thank you to our editor and producer, Erica Carpenter. We appreciate you.
Thanks for joining us. See you next week.
Just a quick disclosure, this podcast is for educational purposes only. It does not constitute a psychologist-client relationship and should not be used in place of an expert evaluation or therapy.